Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
You're listening to Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. I'm your host, Rob Port. If I sound distracted, it's because I've been busy covering this story all morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad Oban.
He's right of center, I'm left of center, both sides of the political spectrum.
I think it's cathartic. I think it's a necessary and proper debate. I'm glad we're having it.
And honestly, we have to do better.
Okay, I don't know why I'm getting blamed for this, right? Welcome to Plain Talk, where we're going to be talking some higher education and big changes in higher ed. We have multiple vacancies in the president's position that need to be filled. Is it two? I should introduce our guest before I just start talking to him, because I have a tendency to do that. I'll just start talking. I don't introduce. Our guest is the commissioner of the North Dakota University System. You may say, Rob, weird. Why are you calling him a commissioner? He's the chancellor. Well, it turned out we weren't supposed to be calling them the chancellor all this time. The state constitution and state law says the commissioner, not the chancellor. So, all those past chancellors were unconstitutional, I guess, because we were calling them the wrong thing. They should have been, I'm joking. They should have been, be called the commissioner. So our commissioner of higher education, Brent Sanford. And what is it? Is it two vacancies in the university system? We have NDSU and Valley City.
We have four. We have
Four.
DCB and Bismarck State.
My goodness. 4. All right. So that's a lot of work. Now, one thing that I've been arguing a little bit, and first of all, I want to say I'm sad to see David. This is not me being backhanded towards any of the other presidents. I thought David Cook in particular came into a really tough job at North Dakota State. Enrollment was down. They had a big budget shortfall. He really did a lot of hard work to clean that up. I don't blame him for wanting to go home. I think there's some personal reasons there that he wants to head back to Iowa, where they're from. Hard to blame anybody for wanting to go home. But he's leaving behind some big shoes to fill at NDSU.
Yes, he is. And President Lefebvre from Valley City is a very similar story, going back home to his alma mater at Northern State in Aberdeen. So those two are, hey, dream opportunities for both of those men. I'm happy for them both and their families. Sad for us, right? And it's a lot of work to replace presidents. It's an upheaval at these campuses when everybody's worried about who's the next person going to be, and they're mourning the loss of their leader. And both of these men are revered, and they're appreciated at their campuses. They've both done a lot of work. And look at the other ones, Bismarck State and Dakota College Bottineau. You have retirements that create these trickle effects. So Darling retiring in Lake Region allowed an opening for Dr. Simone to move in from Bottineau. So then you elevate an internal VP, Corey Gorder at Bottineau, and same thing with Bismarck State with the internal Vice President of Academic Affairs, Dan Leinganger, both elevated, but we're doing searches at both of those. Minot State is leading the search at Bottineau because they have an administrative contract to be overseeing the campus, but the system office is in the middle of 3 with Bismarck, Valley City, and NDSU. So yes, it's a lot of work in addition to interim legislative formula committee, higher ed institutions, looking at ERP replacements, so looking at our IT system replacement in another study, and looking at dual credit in the education committee. So it's a busy time in higher ed. It always is, but but by the way, I'm enjoying it. And yes, the commissioner change that happened when I was put in voted in as the permanent leader of the system, the permanent CEO of the system, as defined in the Constitution and the Century Code. Is the CEO of the system is the is the commissioner of higher education, and that's been 2 months now.
Brent, Rob and I talked some about before you got this role that it made sense for you to stay on in this role. You're a North Dakota guy, and you want to be here. I think that the NDSU president, the Valley City president are, again, I agree with you. They're great leaders. They're going to be a big loss. But are those 2 more examples of maybe we should do a better job of trying to fill internally? If you have an NDSU grad, you don't have to worry about them leaving to go to their alma mater down in Iowa. I mean, should we be putting more of an emphasis on hiring local folks for these big jobs?
Yeah, good question, Chad. I mean, I've expressed this. Wouldn't it be amazing if we had alumni coming in and applying for these jobs, similar to what Ohio, Iowa State and Northern State were blessed with? And
Right.
all kidding aside, I mean that then creates something where possibly they keep the job until retirement. Frankly, I have other presidents in the system that are telling me, "Hey, I love living in North Dakota, but I'd like one more opportunity before I'm done." So I mean, these president positions are, they're generally a little more than 2 or 3 years. They're more like 4 to 7 years. But in the big scheme of things with running institutions, if you get that 12-year president that stays for a long time, a Larry Scogan, someone like that, Tom Clifford in the UND, is in Laura if UND is one they always talk about of the days of Tom Clifford, right? I mean, see if you get that 10, 12-year run, how much solid ground that leaves your campus on, and teamwork, etc. So these are things that come into play as we get into, back in time. April, we were looking at legislature questioning why we use the search firms, why we spent so much on searches, what are we going to do going forward, and I guess now is a time to decide of how to do that, knowing that there's intention for us not to use search firms for every single one of these. So we're looking at one of the four would be with the search, and likely the largest one. That'd be a lot of internal work, right? And the constituency from NDSU obviously is looking at the need for the largest breadth of candidates as possible. So then we'll hit a legislative session again with, we'll see what the reaction is. Is it appropriate? Are we getting really good presidential candidates from the internal searches? These are internal searches as in bringing in resumes, advertising nationally. So it's not just limiting anything, right? I mean, it's allowing that the national advertising in the appropriate places where interested VPs and presidents are seeing these opportunities. So we believe we can do a good job with internal searches, but I guess it's one of those where the success is judged later on once the candidates
Yeah.
are in place and we see how
I,
the new presidents are doing.
I think that's all fair. As someone who's been banging the drum about promoting internally and also belly aching about how sometimes it seems like whether it's a city commission or a county commission or the university system, it's like sometimes it feels like we can't tie our shoes without asking a consultant how to do it first. And it's a little frustrating, and I think we spend a lot of money on it. Although, I mean, there are limits to it. I mean, it's one thing to say, "Oh, we ought to promote from within." Well, do people within want the job? Who are the applicants? That's a fair question. We talk about that in politics. Oh, we ought to elect more of this sort of person. We ought to elect more of that sort of person. Well, are those people running? Because you can't elect
Right.
them if they're not on the ballot. So,
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
that's part of the problem. But tell us
Yep.
a little bit about what the process looks like. I mean, the idea of maybe saving some money on a search firm and promoting from within. I mean, how do these things, is there like a national Craigslist or something for university jobs, or how does that even, monster.com? I don't know. I mean, how
Well,
does,
one side says you're not going to get the candidates because they're basically recruited and held on the bench by the recruiting firms, and then they open up that avenue once the positions are posted, and then they're bringing in their candidates.
there are markets and everything, aren't they?
Oh yes,
Big recruiter is out
yeah,
there hoarding up all the candidates. So you
yep.
have to
And you
come to
can't talk
them.
to anyone else. Never don't answer ads by yourself. It has to be through us. I mean, if that's really how it happens, I don't know. But that's one side of the equation saying that. Another side is saying the really great candidates in state don't even know these things are coming up if it's not something that is publicized, that there's not a process to it. So we're gonna have the ability to see a little bit of both with
Yeah.
what's happening with these
Well,
process.
that's my argument is let's just express a an intention that we would really like internal candidates. We would really like to consider people internally to move up at some of these institutions, or even if they're already in an institution in the system, take over a leadership job at another institution. We would really like to see that because I think North Dakota would benefit from that. And not that there's anything wrong with people who come from Iowa or California or some of these other places, just that sometimes it's helpful to have some shared cultural history. It's helpful for somebody who's already been working in the system, maybe already has some relationships with lawmakers and executive branch people and everything else. I just think those things are helpful. And if we're intentional about it, if we're making it clear, we would really like to promote from within. I think that's what I'm looking for.
So that you'd be happy to know the process we've done at Valley City then. And so the Valley City is the third one. Bismarck NDSU or Bismarck State NDSU are in the process already. We did assign the co-chairs for the Valley City search, and we do need to name the interim sooner because President Lefebvre will be moving on by January 5th to Aberdeen. So we don't have the time frame that we're blessed with President Cook looking at a March time frame. So we have to get after it on the interim, announcing an interim, having a bit of a process for it. And so we put out an email, current and former employees in the system, of send in your resumes if you're interested. Send in your resume, CV, send them into Bethany, who is my assistant, and we will go over the names and provide names to the board. And the board will decide at the December 4th meeting who the interim president of Valley City State will be throughout the search. So that person will get the entire second semester and to the point where the next president is hired. We also are going to be very intentional about expressing whether these are interim to permanent opportunities or if it's interim only. And in this case, we're desiring the Valley City State interim to be interim only. And I can tell you, personally, feeling the difference at Bismarck State, and also President Leingang jumping into the role at Bismarck State with it being a little nebulous on, well, is this interim to full? Is this not? Sometimes it has been, sometimes not. So we're trying to be very transparent and communicating that up front going forward. This is interim only. So put in your resumes, bring your interest if you want to do this for this period of time. We need someone to hold down the fort to make sure that the policies that we put in place, the people that are in place, keep the train on the tracks, right? Whereas the interim, if there's an interim that has opportunity for the full-time and you're doing a search, then it's like what President Leingang is the process he's at Bismarck State of deciding whether he's putting his name in or not. He's always said he would. So my understanding, my intention is that he would be a candidate and have his name in the search as well. But you're also the interim president, so it's a little clunky. So
Yeah.
Again, we're trying to be transparent about this going forward.
So, Commissioner Sanford, one of the reasons we had you on was to talk about the North Dakota legislature, quote, digging into subsidizing online college classes for out-of-state students. The headline of that article also says the state is spending $22 million a year to subsidize out-of-state online students. Can you talk a little bit about what North Dakotans are getting for those $22 million that are being spent? Because it's such a big number, and it sort of ignores the fact that those folks are also paying tuition and bringing money in. It's not exactly an ROI or a net amount of money, but can you talk a little bit about this issue and why the legislature is worked up about it?
Yes, and it's $22 million for a biennium, Chad. So it's for 2 years, but
Okay.
it seems like a lot of money when we argue about much less sums of money, even in the appropriation bill that ends up being $700 million plus for what the general fund allocation is into credit production in higher ed. So out of $699 million, the best guesstimate we have now is $22 million from the previous bienniums is what the previous biennium funding, which would be from 21-23 credits. 22 million would be from the definition of online out of state. So that's you'll see OSOS a few times now going into session, even maybe in articles, but online out of state only, or online students out of state, I think is what it stands for. But it's not just out of state. So it's not completely around the boundaries. Minnesota students are being pulled out. Montana students are being pulled out. And obviously online North Dakota residents are being pulled out of that number. And so the number that is 22 million is roughly 78,000 credits that are produced by folks not in contiguous states, paying for credits from our system. All right. In a big scheme of things, we have roughly the same number, 5,000 or 6,000 students that are NDUS students that are outside, and then we also have 5,000 or 6,000 North Dakotans that are paying for online education outside. So we're even. We're import export in and out plus minus. We're about even as a state. Think of Arizona when they have 100,000 plus from Arizona State. They have University of Phoenix. They have Grand Canyon. They are so far in the other direction where they have hundreds of thousands more that are out of state students that are paying for education from those institutions. We at North Dakota are even. And my concern about this conversation becoming so toxic and so dominating of a conversation when it's less than 3% of the whole picture is that what do we do going forward to compete in higher ed when this model is moving to be half of the actual model of who's buying credits, who's not, who's taking courses, who's finishing their degrees. It's the best way for someone to go from an associate to a bachelor, staying with their family, staying in their job, finishing online to get that bachelor degree. Not a lot of argument on that. And there's also not a lot of argument that it's a very valid way of educating within the state. So to answer your question, the concern is obviously, is there a return on investment for North Dakota taxpayers of paying for these students that are outside? And so the chore I've been giving the presidents on this is you need to come back to the legislators with who these students are. How is their value from these students? And so, for example, we put together a list of the top 10 programs by each institution. And Bismarck States is heavily in the electric power technology, energy management, electrical transmission. So these happen to be, a lot of them are employees of, say, a Basin Electric or Great River Energy, the companies that are the big donors and benefactors at Bismarck State for the energy programs over the years. Were asking President Scogan back in 2007, we need a way for these students that are your former students to get bachelor degrees when they're moving into management positions because they have lineman degrees. And a lot of those courses aren't able to be moved into a business school. The first 60 credits, they're not able to be fully transferred in. So Bismarck State allowed an online energy management bachelor degree, giving credit for the entire associate degree as an electrical lineman. And then they could finish that online, stay in their job, and all of a sudden they can be a grid operator instead of being a lineman. And so it's very seamless from their alma mater, them moving up in their career, same employers that are North Dakota employers. That's not the case everywhere. I'm telling Bismarck State, don't worry about your programs. I don't think that's a concern. That's definitely, I can tell you the governor's not concerned about that one. The appropriators are not concerned about that one. They're more interested in who's taking courses from the outside because it's cheaper or more convenient, but we'll never see that person. And is that something we should be reimbursing general fund for those credits? That's the question. And so if we're talking 22 million for that, out of 700 million, that 699 million, as a matter of fact, 699 million is a credit reimbursement amount. 22 of that 699 is for this. And what we're hearing from Senator Sorvag as the chair of the interim funding committee is, I'm just wondering about if we could take that and put it somewhere else. So his quote in the story was, I'd probably rather give 22 million of scholarships to North Dakota kids than that. And so that's pretty much the entirety of the argument.
Part of the problem is I don't know that we're not producing enough high school graduates to fill all of our capacity in the university system. So I mean, even if you wanted to, we'll make $22 million in scholarship. I mean, that's nice, but I mean that's going to be for students who are either already going somewhere else. I mean, I don't know. I do understand the argument, and I think you really put your finger on it. We need to know who those students are to demonstrate, I think, to the taxpayers that there's return on investment here. We're doing either we're providing an opportunity for a North Dakota student who was born here, or we're attracting new people to our state who are going to come here and take jobs here, start businesses here, do all the wonderful things we want them to do in North Dakota. I do worry. I mean, I'm looking at the future of higher ed, and I think some of the frustration comes from, we have these at times, kind of lavish, some of these campuses, brick and mortar campus. I say lavish, probably by the measures of other states, we're pretty modest, but, it's a lot of investment. I mean, part of me wonders if, as more and more of the academic work moves online, what's going to be left of the campuses but some sports facilities? That seems to be kind of where we're heading. And I'm not sure. I guess I'm trying to describe a lot of the political angst it's not that we're against outsiders. I think it's just the model is changing so quickly. How do we keep up with the times, but also keep the focus on North Dakota and don't just become a Grand Canyon State University that's just advertising for everybody nationally? Or maybe we want to become that and we can make revenue that way. I don't know, but I think at some point, like, I think you're right. I think that the job in this debate is to demonstrate to North Dakota leaders what the benefit is to North Dakotans for doing this.
Yes.
That's got to
And
be
so,
compelling.
yes. If you look at a total biennial head count of anybody that's taking a credit is counted as one. And so when you see the enrollment changes from biennium to biennium, sometimes people will tell me, I don't like that number because it might be a person taking one online credit. But like it or not, that's how higher ed measures themselves nationwide, et cetera. But a total biennial head count. So anybody that took a credit for 2-year period, 77,000. 54,000 of them are on campus. So on person, in person, not, I don't mean freshmen, sophomores in dorms. I mean, on campus, going to classes on campus. Most of them are taking at least one class online, by the way. So they're called a hybrid student. So this definition of who's online is becoming really, really, really hard to actually define a black and white answer. The representative from Wichita, Western Interchange States for higher ed, answered Senator Sorvag in one of the last committees to his question of, is this online continuing? There's nothing we can do about it. And the answer was, well, when you consider that a lot of freshmen are now taking all 5 of their courses online, laying on their dorm room bed. Yes, online education is here. It's a choice of how they want to learn. They can choose to take the course online hybrid, living in the dorm, living in Fargo as a student at NDSU, or they might be living in Maine on a couch because it's affordable. They want to get an engineering degree or they want to get 2 classes. It's really a matter of how do we get the data in here to show what our students need to do and the potential North Dakota workforce that might be drawn in from out of state. Keep in mind, if someone's picking UND or Bismarck State from far outside of our boundaries, there's a reason. Maybe they're military, maybe they're alumni, maybe their parents are alumni, maybe it's someone like me that was in Denver that came back. I mean, it's like there's a reason they could choose a lot of other providers. And so the campuses are saying there is nexus there. If someone's choosing to be a UND space studies master's or PhD student, maybe they have an undergrad from here. Maybe they're, and so we want to make sure not to just throw it all out. But I get it. I totally get the question of if there's return on investment. I do. And so from our standpoint, system offices, let's be transparent. Let's answer the questions of the legislators. Let's put it out there for them to see. They're the ones that tell us how they fund higher ed. And then we will make do with that as we get moving on into session and past.
Brent, talking about return on investment, I mean, there's a paragraph in this article from the Vice President of Finance from the University of North Dakota, which, by the way, I attended, that says they receive $2.09 in tuition and fees for every $1 of state funding. To me, if you're getting $2 with a $1 investment, that seems like a pretty good return on investment. Not even talking about who these students are. This is more money coming in than the legislature is appropriating. Isn't that a pretty good example that this is working?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so Carla Stewart answered the call to explain what this higher ed model looks like. And the answer I'll get from those that are not seeing the ROI is, but it's not bringing a human being into our state to work the job openings we have here. So if we're spending $1 out there for UND to get $2 more, but not bring in someone to actually fill a job here, is that what we're trying to do? Reimbursing on out of state. And so some states don't reimburse for out of state. Their reimbursement models are for in state. And so what we do in our system is a credit is a credit is a credit. A credit might be a dual credit student in high school. It might be online out of state, far out of the region. It might be someone that's actually here in medical school. It might be someone that's in their dorm room, is taking all 5 courses online. That if they complete a credit, that's where our formula is reimburse general fund dollars, $699 million last biennium for a course being completed. That is unique to North Dakota. Another thing unique that we found out that I thought was a really good tidbit was the fact that we don't have a factor for reimbursing based on graduations, based on credentialing is what that term would be called. Certificates, associate degrees, tech degrees, master electricians, whatever it is, whatever the graduate, the completions, the credentialing, we don't have a factor within our higher ed formula for that. So some of this conversation in interim finance for the funding formula is, okay, if we go away from some of this weighted credit hour repayment only, what other factors would we like to compensate for? What would drive behavior the direction we want to see higher ed moving? And so I want to be transparent and accountable, but also responsive to the workforce needs and our needs of our students in North Dakota. So we're up for listening and being part of that conversation. We want to be
Brent,
viewed as that.
Can I ask just one follow-up to that? So is the suggestion here with this UND example that conceivably UND could still be getting that $2.09 without that $1 state investment, that you could still be getting those $2 without that dollar?
Yeah, so then it gets into an argument of, would that student still be paying the $2 if UND has to increase the tuition rate accordingly to compensate for not getting any general fund reimbursement back?
Sure.
So we're heavily into a conversation of cost. And it seems to me that it's getting to a point of realizing that its costs the same or similar because you have this technology behind making sure your online course is something that when you're competing against online only programs, it's not just a camera behind the head of the instructor. It's a very, you're very interactive with taking the tests, with having the materials available on your computer. I mean, it's a technology investment versus the space, so there needs to be reimbursement. But I'm contending we're going to see less offering of online classes if we take the funding away. And are we okay with that? When you look at half of our online students are North Dakota residents. If we strip away half those out-of-state residents so that the revenue is not coming in, is the offering we have left with that technology, with those instructors that are left, is that enough for us to be able to provide that need in state? For example, Bismarck State is 2/3 of their online energy management programs are students. 2/3 are North Dakota residents. 2/3 of them. And then, another couple hundred are in immediately adjoining states. And so does that hurt those of us that are left and those students that are left if we take away the economy of scale? So it's really down to that. What do we need for a business model? Does the scale have to be a certain level to offer a good online delivery model for our students? Otherwise, they're going to be taking the great online offerings from out of state, from Western Governors, from Arizona State, from Southern New Hampshire, that's their entire business model.
Brent, thanks for your time.
All right.
Thanks, Brent.
Fun as always. Thank you.
Hey, Plain Talk listeners, have something to say? Call or text Plain Talk with your questions, comments, or headlines you want us to cover.
Just dial 701-587-3141. Leave us your message or shoot us a text with your name and location, and you could be featured on an upcoming show.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I am in Jamestown.
Hey, Rob and Chad. My name's Tony. I live in Grand Forks.
That's 701-587-3141.
Call us, text us, vent, praise.
We want you in the conversation. Thanks for being part of the show.
Now let's get back to today's episode.
Welcome back. Just ended with, I almost called him Chancellor again, Commissioner Brent Sanford. Chad, he used the word toxic to describe, some of the scrutiny that the online education, and I think that's unfortunate. I don't think it has to be toxic. I don't think this is a situation where anyone was running a scam. I think it's a situation where how students, be they North Dakota students or students anywhere really, are accessing education is changing in some fundamental ways. And there's a lot of challenges in that. There's a lot of challenges. What do our campuses look like when, close to half? I mean, he was citing off air, he cited some enrollment numbers at like NDSU and UND. Half or close to half of the students aren't on-campus students anymore. That's a big change. So what does it mean for buildings and structures? What does it mean for, how this education is delivered? I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. I like the idea. We were talking a little bit off air again about like agriculture students being able to stay on the farm, like get the education they want to get, while also staying on the farm and being able to help out, being able to help with the harvest, being able to hunt and fish, and also not run up debt paying for meals and board when you can live with mom and dad and eat mom's cooking every day, or dad's cooking as the case may be. So I guess I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think we need to be afraid of it. We just have to be heads up and understand that the changes are coming and make sure that we're focused on having this system serve North Dakota and North Dakota students the best. That's it.
I think as long as I've been paying attention, higher ed's been this weird political football at the legislature. And I mean, we put a ton of money into it, so it makes sense. I think if one of the things, Brent, being a local guy with good relationships, maybe you can just calm things down a little bit
Yeah.
with higher ed, I think is important. I also think the legislators need to understand that it is changing. The way we deliver higher education is changing. Do I have some worries about, the skills that people might learn being on a campus and being in, like, when I think about my time, I went to BSC and UND, often the best learning experiences I had were from other students, right? Being in a classroom together. And can you get that online?
Well, and the socializing. I mean,
Right.
there's. I'm not a big one on because we sold a lot of kids a lot of student loan debt.
Right.
Based on the idea of the grandiose college
College
experience. I don't
experience.
believe in that. I think there is value in meeting some new people and
Right.
meeting some people who are from outside your community, outside your state, being exposed to some things. There's value in that. There's no
Right.
question.
But so I do worry about that. But to one of the points he said, I think that person from Witchy had said, "Yeah, this is happening. People are now potentially taking all their classes from a dorm room on campus online." Sort of like the conversation we had on Wednesday show about AI. Some of this stuff is moving, and we need to accept that it's moving. And Brent mentioned Arizona State University, Grand Canyon University, Arizona,
Whose ads are ubiquitous.
everywhere,
I mean,
right?
yeah.
And ASU, I mean, you remember Doug Burgum used to talk about ASU as the model of the future. And, I still get a kick out of it. Our previous governor said, you can do everything right here. And now our governor's like, take this out of the schools. How quickly that evolved.
Chad was
But
holding up a smartphone, by the way,
yeah,
for those of you
there you
listening
go.
on Spotify or
Uh,
whatever.
so it is moving fast. And I want to make sure, I mean, I think his overall point about the investment in online education, sure, let's cut off those damn out of state kids. But does that mean we have less programs for our kids and our adults who are trying to better themselves in state? That's the sort of give and take that the legislature has
Right.
to figure out, but they have to be forward looking.
Well, just to illustrate how complicated it is calculating some of this stuff, you could say, well, we spend X amount of dollars subsidizing out-of-state students, where some of those dollars is salary for an instructor, because that's a sunk cost. You're going to pay that instructor the salary, whichever students are sitting in front of them.
Right.
So, I think it gets hard to unravel this. I think it's fair to say we don't want North Dakota taxpayers, footing a big chunk of the bill for students who are never going to set foot in North Dakota. Like you have to be able to tie. It is the North Dakota University System. It is funded by the North Dakota taxpayers. It was founded by the North Dakota taxpayers, and it needs to serve the North Dakota taxpayers. So they have to make that case. And sometimes the case may be, listen, these out-of-state students, even though they never set foot in North Dakota, their presence here allows us to do these other things for students who are going to be here or who are already here.
And can't you make the case that some of those out-of-state students are subsidizing through their tuition and fees our students right here? If they're
Maybe.
paying
I mean,
$2,
if that's the way the math works out,
right.
sure. I mean, that's the argument. And then it's on legislators to accept that. But
I also
that's
think
okay.
it's, interesting to look at who these out-of-state folks are, because I think Sanford made the right point that these aren't just people who are like Googling University of North Dakota online. They're people who have a connection to the state in some way. Like they grew up here, have relatives that grew up here. There's some connection. I doubt we're so much cheaper that somebody sitting in Southern California is like, you know what, where I should take my online classes is North Dakota. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would assume most people have some connection to the state that are taking these classes.
I do it during that discussion, and I made the comment about like the only facilities left on campus are going to be the sports facilities. That does feel like where we're heading. I remember the last Republican state convention was held on the I think it's the Sanford Health Athletic. I think they call it the Shack.
Okay.
This is how interested I am in collegiate sports. I don't even know what these places are called. But it was their arena, and the convention was held in the arena. I remember standing outside with a lawmaker, and he said, "Look around." And it's like every building around us was an athletics building. I mean, that's what's getting built on campus these days. Not I mean, I don't want to say that there's not academic buildings and facilities being built, but I mean, the balance is shifting. I mean, increasingly the academic mission is online and the athletics mission is still brick and mortar.
Again,
And
Grand Canyon U has a Division I basketball team that went to March Madness recently. They have a top 15 college baseball program, and I'm guessing there's not a lot of students walking around that campus.
yeah, or at least the percentage of students on campus based on their marketing is probably significantly smaller than the online students. And I think that's going to be the case in North Dakota one day. I guess we need to be thinking about that. College sports, as much as I have a problem with the way we do it, is not going anywhere. This is clearly what the public wants. So, we're going to have to figure out how to deal with it. This is a good debate to have. I think it's a healthy debate. It doesn't need to be toxic.
Right.
And we can reach an appropriate equilibrium on this.
When I think going back to the first part of our conversation, I'm interested in how they handle these 4 open presidencies. I mean, who's going to Dakota State and Bottineau who's not a local person, though, right? I mean, it's such a small campus that I can't imagine.
Well, I worry for a position, and not to run down Dakota College, but I mean, the sort of national candidate you get who's going to take a job in Bottineau, is that the best and brightest?
Yeah.
Or is there somebody? I think there's a lot to be gained from developing leadership internally. And maybe we need to be making longer plans and not wait for a vacancy before we figure out who the next person's going to be. Maybe it's okay to have, like the Royals did, have an heir and a spare, right?
Sure.
Something like that, where we have people who are sort of on track, and understanding plans can change, life happens, things like that. But maybe we need to plan a little bit like, this is our current president. This is the person. This is the heir apparent who's moving up. I mean, maybe an approach like that, I think, would be beneficial, and have people who are not just coming in. And especially, I mean, one thing he said, because he's right, a lot of times these college presidents stick around 3, 4, 5, 6 years. It's pretty unusual to get somebody who sticks around for a decade or more.
Yeah, frankly, when he's using Tom Clifford as one of the examples,
He's an outlier.
Tom Clifford, that was a long time ago now.
That was,
where he was the president. That was before I went to UND.
So if we're going to have that sort of turnover in that position, I think it makes sense to be prepared for the vacancies before they happen. Like, let's have somebody who can just step up, and then you start looking for the next person, and then you do on-the-job training. I think we'd be so much better served. And I'm less concerned, like, was this person born in New York, or were they born in Mandan? I'm less concerned about that than making sure that people who are here have some experience in North Dakota, understand the culture, understand the political environment, because I'm sorry, it's an important part of doing that job well. I think we'd do better if we were prepared and we kind of had an idea of who was going to be next, maybe before there's even a vacancy.
And I think, looking at the 4 different jobs, they're so different. I mean, the NDSU job is so much different. Then you got BSC.
NDSU is even different than UND when you consider the extension service, the ag role, all that. It's just a different job, even though, those 2 institutions are comparable in size and mission, are very different jobs.
Right. No, I think it's going to be interesting how they handle this. And, it is, do you use the search firm? Do you not use the search firm? I think those are questions that everybody deals with.
I did like that. The consultancy thing's kind of a racket. I mean, come on. I read a lot of consultant reports. Usually I'm reading the ones where they come in like something terrible has happened, and so they have to bring in a consultant too. And maybe that isn't appropriate, but a lot of times, like, you read these reports and it's like, this is nothing special.
Right.
There is nothing that somebody who works and lives in the state of North Dakota could do this. I mean,
yeah, I've got some personal experience with sort of search firms and looking for jobs in North Dakota where they're searching all over the country for the perfect candidate. And it turns out the best candidate lives 6 blocks from the office. I mean, sometimes we hire a search firm that does too much looking out and not enough looking in.
Yeah,
so
I think that's fair. You want to talk about the Ethics Commission?
I don't want to, but I'm willing to.
The ongoing, we still have 2 vacancies. So the commission, I guess, to catch people up, there were 3 vacancies on the commission. Although the Ethics Commission really wants one of those people, one of the vacancies, Murray Sogsby, his current term's up. They really want him reappointed. So much so that when the Ethics Commission initially solicited applications for the position, they only advertised 2, not 3. Ward Kozer and Murray Sogsveen, both their terms are up. And so Kozer's not seeking reappointment. Sogsveen is. And then there was another, one of the commissioners passed away that created the 3rd vacancy. The state constitution obliges the governor, the Senate Majority Leader, and the Senate Minority Leader, that's Kelly Armstrong, David Hogue, and Kathy Hogan, respectively, to appoint the replacement. And there has to be a consensus. They all 3 have to agree on the appointees. They have appointed former OMB Director Pam Sharp. I don't think that was a very controversial appointment. I think most people think she's a good person qualified for the job. I 100% agree with that. I thought she was great at OMB. I think she'll do a good job on the commission. There's a deadlock on the other 2. Hogan and Hogan want Sogsveen reappointed. The governor is arguing that under the current leadership, which includes Sogsveen, that the commission has overstepped their bounds in some important ways. And I agree with that. We still have a holdout. And as we're recording this, actually, this episode will be released on Friday. We're recording it on Wednesday, the 19th. The Ethics Commission is meeting. And what I feel is proof positive of the governor's argument, which is that the Ethics Commission is just kind of doing whatever they want and ignoring the law. Murray Sogsveen, despite the fact that his term is up, is participating in the meeting. He's making motions, he's taking votes, and I don't see anywhere in state law where he's allowed to continue to serve on the commission beyond his term. Now, the question of a quorum has been settled with Pam Sharp appointed. The commission has enough members to function. They would still be down 2 people, and that's not a good situation, but they'd be able to function. It's not a question of whether or not the Ethics Commission could meet, but he's still there. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like I've been talking ad nauseum about the laundry list of, the state constitution says we can't have personal expenditures, but the Ethics Commission says personal expenditures on childcare is okay. Michael Howe, the Secretary of State, he lobbied long and hard for needed and meaningful reforms to North Dakota's campaign finance laws. The legislature didn't pass them. So the Ethics Commission comes, I talked to Secretary Howe, the Ethics Commission comes to him and say, we'll just implement them through an advisory opinion. And he said, no, you can't do that. Howe, who's also, by the way, a former lawmaker, says the legislature has to write the laws. So we have this ongoing standoff, Chad, and I'm beginning to wonder if maybe the governor made a tactical mistake. It's not often. I think Kelly Armstrong is a very skilled politician. He's good at this stuff. And I would say he's usually smarter than I am about it. But in this instance, I'm wondering if he made a tactical blunder by putting Sharp on the commission and giving them a quorum so where they can just continue to meet and they can stay deadlocked on these other 2 commission members.
So let me start out by saying the things that I always say, which are if they would have fully funded the Ethics Commission and all the things that the Ethics Commission needs, I think the Ethics Commission would be functioning much, much better, and the legislature has failed to do that.
That's fair. I should, by the way, say I made the case that the legislature has also violated the Constitution across multiple fronts. So it's a little frustrating because there's plenty of criticism for both sides here. By the way, that's not necessarily Governor Armstrong's fault.
Right.
He doesn't control, he's not in the legislature.
So the campaign finance law, I mean, we followed that pretty closely. It's what sort of slowed down the end of the session there. Michael Howe was on the right side of that thing. I was shocked at any suggestion that you should just implement it through advisory opinion. That's not the way this works. Still sort of shocked even that the suggestion that we could just do this through an advisory opinion, especially at a time where the Ethics Commission should be trying to get out of the crosshairs of the legislature. That would have been a huge error in judgment. And I think Michael Howe is absolutely right on that. Now, in terms of the personal use for childcare and things like that, here's where I struggle, Rob. The Secretary of State's office, as I've experienced personally a ton with this Secretary of State, more so with the previous Secretary of State, always says, we can't give you legal advice. So we can't give you an advisory on what this means exactly. If they won't give you that, I mean, why shouldn't the Ethics Commission be the people? I mean, you can say the Ethics Commission gave the wrong advisory opinion. But if you're a lawmaker like Josh Boucher, who else are you supposed to ask for that question? Who else? Tom Beadle wouldn't ask for them about a trip to Israel, right? That's, to me, what the Ethics Commission should be doing.
Yeah.
And then if they give the wrong opinion, well, but that's their job to give opinions, right? I mean, that's what I struggle with a little bit here.
The problem that I have is not that the Ethics Commission is issuing legal opinions. Now, I think our Attorney General has been obviously his job. I mean, he's legal counsel for the state. That's his job. And I think he has maybe a different case to make about legal opinions and stuff like that. And my problem with it is not because the legislature explicitly, and I think it was unanimously passed legislation, explicitly gave the Ethics Commission permission to issue legal opinions. And I think you're right. Somebody has to be able to say, like somebody should be able to say in good faith, I don't understand this.
Is this
and I want to do it. I want to do it the right way. Tell me what the right way is so I can do it that way. We don't want to shut those people down. This isn't a gotcha thing. I want people, the whole point of writing the law down is for people to understand what the law is and be able to follow it.
Right.
And sometimes the law has to be interpreted. So I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is the Constitution is unambiguous about personal expenditures. It says none. You may not use this for personal expenditures. Now you can argue maybe that's poorly written. Maybe if I put gas in my personal car to drive myself around to, political rallies for my campaign, is that a personal use? If I use some of that gasoline after the fact to go pick my kids up at school, is that a personal use?
Right.
I think you could argue that the Constitution is poorly written. The constitutional amendment was poorly written across multiple fronts. But the thing is it says what it says. And I have a hard time. I don't know what's more personal expenditure than caring for your kids.
Right.
I think in that instance, it's not on the Ethics Commission to just I think that crossed the line to where the law says one thing and now they're saying that it's okay. And I think it's born of this attitude where they think they can just sort of create new policy by issuing legal opinions.
So you would have been comfortable if their advisory opinion would have been, nope, you can't spend campaign funds on that.
And if we want that to change, then we need to change the language of the law.
Yeah. So it is interesting, and I can see why Drew doesn't like this, right? I mean, because historically the Attorney General has been the only person who's given legal opinions. And then the Ethics Commission, again, we need somewhere you can get a quick sort of response to, can I go on this trip to Israel or not with this person funding?
Well, I think
couldn't the Ethics Commission just not give a legal opinion without it being like a lawyer? I mean,
we need a referee, and we need a referee that's not necessarily going to require us to file a lawsuit and go through the courts to get the judiciary involved. But I think there is value in having a referee. But here's another problem. What happens if the Ethics Commission issues one legal opinion and the Attorney General issues another legal opinion?
Right.
And Legislative Council, the lawyers for the legislature, have a third opinion.
Right.
Well, who's right? Well, I mean, ultimately, something like that would have to be settled by the courts, right?
And what happens if somebody asks for an ethical ruling on if I can take this trip with this funding, and the Ethics Commission is wrong, and that person gets sued?
Right.
What happens then? Whose lie is the Ethics Commission then going to be?
Yeah. Well, we don't have. That's not even a hypothetical. Jason Doctor asked, apparently consulted the Ethics Commission about his dealing, and then ultimately was convicted of a misdemeanor for that dealing. Now, I mean, that all gets a little muddy, but we have a situation.
But the Ethics Commission did not say you're safe here.
Right.
They did not give him that. What if they would have given him an opinion that said you're okay to vote on this, and then
somebody files a suit, and then you end up, or somebody, I guess, the state's attorney.
Right. Says, no, that's wrong. You voted illegal here. What happens then?
I think the real problem is there's multiple problems. I mean, the obdurate attitude towards the Ethics Commission from the legislature has not been helpful. There's a lot of mistrust there. But also I think the fact that we did this through a ballot measure, and you could blame the legislature for this too. They should have acted I think previously, I think law that creating an ethics commission that would have emerged from the legislative process, I think would have been a lot better than what we have. What we ended up with was a ballot measure. And there wasn't a lot of consideration put into how the ethics commission is going to fit into the larger framework of government, because the people who are there now are, I think, are convinced that they're like a fourth branch of government, and they can legislate, and they can issue judicial rulings and do all sorts of things that do not comport with the American tradition of three separate equal branches of government with very defined roles. And there's a way to make an ethics commission work within that framework, but this ain't it.
Yeah, I mean, it is the one sort of good point you have on why the constitutional measure process might not be good. But I do think, I mean, we're going to have a single subject measure on the ballot, I think, in June. I'm opposed to that because I'm just nervous on who gets to determine what a single subject is. But I think when we're looking at constitutional measures, when you have like a 25-page document, I think that should give people some pause, right? I mean, I think we saw it with this one. We saw it, Marcy's law was pretty broad as well. I think if we're changing the Constitution, it should be tight and really focused on what you're trying to accomplish. But yeah, I mean, this is all just, it's a cultural change to the way North Dakota does political business, right? With the Ethics Commission being this other thing over here. I mean, part of me, maybe, I wish the Secretary of State had the power to give some advice on campaign finance, because there's been many times where I've talked to them and their staff, and I've said this on this podcast before, I think they're the best staff of any state agency. I think Michael Howe is tremendous at his job.
Well, I think a great balance too between professionalism, but also like not being technocrats, like being able to just talk to you a little bit. But I understand their hesitancy and not
Of course,
like they're not your lawyer.
right?
You know, they don't want to be put in a position where they tell you something and then later on you're like, oh, it was the wrong thing.
Right.
We need a referee in this. Like, we need somebody, you know, we need to give people who want to participate in the political process, whether they're a lobbyist or an elected official or a state employee, we need to give them some certainty about what the rules are and what the appropriate way is to comply with them. Because you know, the system we have now, and it's really unfortunate. I feel like there's some people outside the ethics commission that are using it as a political football. I think this sort of political campaign to try to pressure Governor Armstrong to reappoint Murray Sogsveen risks turning this into exactly the sort of political body that we didn't want it to be.
And I also think it's a bad political move, because the last thing Kelly's responding to is a bunch of progressive
he's not
pressure.
giving in on Murray Sogsveen. So I don't know what the two senators think they're going to accomplish by holding off. But he's not reappointing. I don't want to put words in my mouth. I'm not the governor. Based on everything I have observed him say on this and what I know of Kelly Armstrong, and I feel like I know him pretty well, he's not budging on this. And it's frustrating because the one thing I didn't say, those three agree on two other candidates.
Right.
Like, they've all three said these other two are acceptable. So appoint them, stop the political battle, and let's get back to and try to create a better relationship. The Ethics Commission, by the way, is still so new. I mean, I realize it's been around for a long time,
It's a
but
cultural
in terms
change.
but it's young in terms of
Yep.
government institutions. And so a lot of what we're doing now is going to set the tone for generations. So we got to get this right now. And a lot of what the Ethics Commission is doing is wrong. A lot of the way the legislature has reacted. Some in the legislature, not everybody, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush. But the way at least the majority in the legislature has approached this has been frustrating. They've been in the wrong. We need to do a better job, because ultimately this is about transparency and accountability for the people of North Dakota. I don't know that they're getting that right now.
Rob, I can't get over, like, during this discussion when this was being formed and there's consensus between these three people, the theory was it would be the Democrat lawmaker who was always the holdout on people. And now you have the legislature, and maybe this is the way it should be, the legislature holding out together against the executive branch rather than Democrats.
Honestly, that is how it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be sort of institutional
Right.
It's less about partisan consensus than it is about cross-institutional
Right.
consensus.
Maybe we should
So
be applauding the bipartisanship of Senator Hogan here by sticking together on this thing.
maybe. I think that Hogue probably has some. Murray Sogsby was a long time served in the North Dakota National Guard. I think Senator Hogue has some very strong ties to the Guard, served in the Guard as well. I feel like there's some personal connections there maybe that are driving some of this. It's less politics or partisanship than personal, but and I'm not even necessarily begrudging him that. It's just I think that the governor has a clearly articulated case that the Ethics Commission under the past leadership has been off the rails a little bit. And not even the fact the Ethics Commission, by the way, has issued one finding in the entirety of its existence, of roughly a decade in existence, one finding.
Well, let me just say I have great respect for Murray Sagsveen. I hope Kelly changes his mind. I'm sure that'll put him over the top. Me saying he should change his mind on Murray Sagsveen.
Well, he's not gonna, and he doesn't have to. And again, the Constitution requires consensus. If somebody's telling you we're not going to have consensus, then either appoint the two you agree on, or I guess solicit more candidates.
Yeah, but they got to move, because right now this is non-functioning. This is the way this is. It's non-functioning, so we got to move on.
Agreed.
Speaking of moving on,
we're gonna put a pin in it there. We great segue, Chad. Boy, you are just getting so good at this.
Yeah, I've got no training. It's shocking for people when they learn that.
It is really. Well, you have been working on AI a little bit, getting training. Maybe take an online course at one of our universities. Remember, you can always call and leave us a voicemail. Send us a text message, 701-587-3141. If you're the sort of person who would have liked to go to college laying on your bed in your dorm room, know that you won't talk to anybody if you call that number. You'll just talk to a voicemail. So you won't have to actually interact with another human being other than through a digital medium. Maybe that makes you feel more comfortable. I don't know. Social media, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, X. We're at Plain Talk ND. Be sure to follow us. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk again. That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening.
Fun as always. Thank you.